I thought I'd talk a little bit about flat Earth, just a different kind of perspective of how I see things, how they may work. I don't think that we necessarily have to throw out everything we know, or that we've been told. I think we need to reformat it in a way that works for the view of a flat plane. So in that case, you have different levels of the planes, from flat Earth below and then flat Earth above. There's all kinds of different ways to talk about, or visualize how all this works. I like to kind of view it on a big scope, maybe like in a four-dimensional kind of viewing, where you're kind of all around it, you're above it, you can try and picture what's under our feet, to what's above us, and kind of play with that. Some of the things that I've kind of wondered about, without putting God out of this subject, but we need to really kind of focus on scientific type of scenarios, things that work, rather than it wasn't and now what it is. We need to kind of try and formulate something that works in a way that makes all this possible. Some of the things that I kind of have a feeling about, or kind of view in a way in my mind, is how where did the sun come from? Where did the moon come from? If it's not gravitational, if it's not dust in space, pulling everything together, pushing everything away, keeping everything at a distance, yet just perfect enough to keep everything balanced. It can work. It works on a magnetic, fluid dynamic type of way, and some of the things that I kind of view in my own mind is the sun. This sun, the moon, they just are. But no, they came from someplace. They came, and exist. We see them. They're up there. Whether or not the moon is what a moon is a ball, or if it's just a flat disc or whatever. There's ways to kind of go about saying how these things work, and that's what I kind of wanted to kind of share with everybody. Just a different perspective, nothing proven, nothing. It's all just a theory in my mind, how things could have happened, how we can start viewing our reality. But open-mindedness, I would say, from here is a good start. So first thing I'd like to just talk about is the sun and the moon and all. The more I think about that, the more I kind of think that these things came from beneath us, and rose to their position. They found their way up from below. So sort of like a bubble, would want to come from the bottom of the water up to the top of the water. Being that it still has weight, it finds its center there in whatever plane that it's on. That would also suggest that in fact the sun is lighter than the air that we are standing in. Same with the moon. The moon would be actually lighter, even though it has and it looks like it has, you know, mass and weight to it. You know, maybe the interiors of these things are what keep them, you know, on their plane. Um, you know, so I kind of visualize maybe the moon being an old sun. It rose, you know, from the North Pole, detached and burnt as a sun for a very long time. And, you know, that started burning out, you know, and thank God a new sun came up, and that's what we have right now. And it could have been many other suns that, you know, eventually what goes up must come down. So, you know, another way that I kind of look at it is, you know, maybe the land that we're standing on was old suns, you know, rose up through the North Pole, still has an attachment. All these things still have an attachment to its epicenter, you know. So you get this ball of light, a bubble that burns up through the icy sheet, building and creating an atmosphere through the ice as it comes up. It's attached, you know, like an umbilical cord to a magnetic pole to the North Pole, which keeps it swinging. It's just kind of floating and just kind of it wants to go away, and the center of our pod or Earth here has hold of it. It won't let it go too far. You know, so it just kind of goes in a circle around it, and eventually, as it burns out and starts to die, uses up its chemistry, whatever it's made of, you know, it starts to fade, burns lighter and lighter and lighter, like the moon, maybe even. You know, something on the interior of the moon still has it afloat, just to, you know, but could eventually start coming down, spiraling back towards the center, as it's still got a hold on it. Then crashing down into, you know, the Earth, basically creating more land, bringing the water level up. You know, that's just one theory. I mean, it's just something that I kind of view in my head. You know, kind of playing with it, kind of on a fourth dimensional kind of scale. You know, you can kind of picture, you know, this burning ball coming up through ice, you know, slowly materializing, gaining a little crust, fiery inside, you know, kind of just starting to float like a hot air balloon up to its center, wherever it holds well, and starts to do its thing, spin around, burning a new pod of life, you know. And that could have been, you know, how an ice age would have started. The moon, being an old sun, started dying out. There was no other sun, and just was an icier cold, and eventually a new sun birthed out of the North Pole area there, out of the Borealis, and you know, it's got a hold. We got a new sun. It's probably a young sun. It's burning hard. It's hot. You know, it might be, you know, making the circumference of our world, you know, bigger, because it's a much younger. It's burning a lot hotter than you know, the end of days sun. Maybe, you know, the Egyptians went through and stuff. Maybe. Or you know, I mean, I'm this again, this theory is just throwing it out there, you know, because I mean, I kind of went through and looked at Egyptian hieroglyphs, and they kind of don't have a moon symbolized, just the sun. So, you know, kind of what I'm thinking is all they had was what we have is the moon was their sun, and that's what, you know, they considered their life. That was their life bearer, and they watched it deteriorate and lose power. And, you know, either they left and went to a new pod somewhere across the icy sheets of the flat plain, or they, you know, most of them dying. You know, I'm sure we have survivors of that, and we're here, unless we came, left and came back too. I don't know. But that's just kind of a little view on that. And with that in mind, people are talking about a dome over this earth, like a hardened, glass or sapphire, some kind of a dome. Maybe I don't know. But what I kind of view on this is, when you get a very cold, maybe 100. I mean, the coldest you could ever think of cold, 200 minus degrees. That's probably what these ice sheets are outside of our planet. And, you throw in 100-degree temperature with that's pushing back. So we have a rising heat that just folds. It gets to a certain height, it folds, and it creates, like an upside down tornado or whatnot. So, sometimes I kind of look at it like, how NASA says we're spinning 1,000 miles an hour. Well, maybe they know we're not spinning, but the actual spin is in that hurricane, type of effect that's just on the border. It probably starts off as a little snow, 10 to 15 miles an hour winds at the South Pole, and then you get into 200-mile-an-hour winds at the South Pole, and pretty much we turn back. You're not going to go much further, and if you do, you're probably going to get that turbine effect at the very edge. And if you were able to pop through the vortex of this weather type of phenomenon where you got ice, meeting fire, if you were to break through that, then you're just sitting on the coldest ice sheet, that you could ever think of. And then I also kind of think, above us, we have the sky, we have the stars, maybe these stars are just actual planets below, that's just a mirrored image of what's down here. So the stars are, just suns circling a planet, and the only reason why they look like they turn is because of this weather vortex that's created. Like a tornado, it's probably at the very outer edges of it or above us, it's clear, but it's moving at 1,000 miles an hour, so it's, and on the edges it just looked like the worst snowstorm ever, dangerous. You probably wouldn't be able to do anything with that. So they're probably digging underneath the ice to get under these, this wind turbine that's at the outer edge. It's just the worst, and who knows how thick it is, a mile thick of just 1,000-mile-an-hour winds. Even, maybe more than that, 20, 100 miles of 1,000 miles an hour winds. So you're not going to go that way, and up isn't going to happen, because anything that we have down here is down here for a reason. It's not light enough to be, on any other plane. The amount of energy an aircraft uses just to fly, parallel in our own atmosphere is ridiculous. So, throwing a rocket up, it's gonna come tumbling down. It's never gonna go nowhere. So yes, I don't think that we've actually been into what they call outer space, because it's probably just a very thinner and thinnest air, that could, all the way to those levels basically, or it's a fluid